Deborah was sitting at the faculty meeting, discussing the regular old boring things. This day was just like any other, and this faculty meeting was just like any other. The table she was sitting at was oval, and the faculty members sat on 2 rows opposite each other. Further down the same row Deborah sat on sat another faculty member. Her name was Amy Bishop, and she was a 44-year-old biology professor. Nothing seemed weird or off about her. She was just sitting there, just like any other day, just like any other faculty meeting. But this wasn't just another day, and it certainly wasn't just another faculty meeting. 3 of the professors sitting in on the meeting would never leave the room alive. About 30 or 40 minutes had passed, and so far there had been no signs of what was about to come. As they were all sitting there sipping their coffee, Amy Bishop all of a sudden stood up. She reached down into her purse and pulled out a 9mm handgun. She looked cold, emotionless. There was no adrenaline flowing through her body. There was no hatred in her eyes. She was just a cold vessel, under the control of whatever darkness was in her mind. She methodically went to the person sitting next to her and shot that person in the head, execution style. She then went to the next person and shot that person in the head, execution style. She kept making her way down the row of scared faculty members, and with a blank expression shot them in the head. She had by now shot 6 people, and she was pointing her gun at Deborah. Deborah was scared to death but saw an opportunity when Amy Bishop's gun clicked. Deborah initiated a rush against Amy Bishop, and others followed her lead as they pushed her out of the room and barricaded the door. Some time went, but police eventually arrived at the scene. It's likely Deborah saved many lives that day by instigating a rush against Amy Bishop. 3 of the people shot survived, although at least one of them suffered permanent damage. But why did Amy Bishop do this? A middle-aged biology professor that just decides to pull out a gun and start murdering people. What the fuck was going on inside her head? To get to know Amy Bishop, we have to go back, because the spree of Amy's wrath began all the way back in 1986. Amy Bishop was always an egomaniac. She always saw herself as better than others and as more deserving than others. She knew that she was smarter than other people, and when her peers, friends, and her brother were treated better than her, she got furious. It was on December 6th, 1986 that a fatal quote-unquote accident befell the Bishop family. Amy Bishop was at that point 21 years old, and she was living at home with her parents and her 18-year-old brother. Amy had always felt that her brother was treated better than her, and whether she had gotten into an argument this day is unsure. While her mother and brother was out and her father was out Christmas shopping, Amy went to get the shotgun her father kept in a safe. She checked it out a little bit and even did a test shot into her bedroom wall. Then after her brother and mother arrived home, she got into some kind of argument with her brother and she pointed the shotgun at him. Her mother was yelling at her to stop, but she didn't. She pulled the trigger and shot her brother straight in the chest. After shooting her brother, Amy ran out of the house and pointed the gun at a moving vehicle. She tried to steal the vehicle, but a police officer had arrived at the scene, and the police officer snuck up behind Amy and tackled her to the ground. The weird part about her brother's death is that it was written off as an accident. Both Amy and her mother told police that she had shot her brother accidentally, but many police officers didn't believe that. But Amy's mother knew the police chief at the time, and he declared the death as accidental. After the university shooting in 2010, police found all the records pertaining to the case in the former police chief's home. Charges have been brought up against Bishop since then, but she has not been charged with it, as any evidence still remains is circumstantial. But there are other steps in the journey towards triple murder. Amy Bishop's name would pop up again in 1993. In 1993, Amy Bishop, along with her husband James Anderson, were suspected in an attempted pipe bombing. Amy Bishop was at that point in her life working at a children's hospital biology lab. Her behavior of feeling superior often got her butting heads with her superiors. While Amy Bishop was working in the biology lab, her supervisor was a man named Paul Rosenberg, and Amy was afraid that he was going to give her a bad evaluation. And apparently her husband had also talked shit about Paul to someone, saying he wanted to hurt him. Amy's husband wasn't very successful, neither in his career nor his choice of women. But he was mostly there to verify Amy's high thoughts of herself. Not exactly an alpha male, if you get what I'm saying. So both Amy and her husband was the first suspect after a pipe bomb was found to have been mailed to Paul Rosenberg. The bomb never blew up and police started talking to the couple. Amy and her husband shut the investigators out and refused to take a polygraph test. Eventually the case was dropped and it remains unsolved. 9 years after the pipe bomb incident, Amy Bishop's name was up yet again. The year was 2002 and Amy was with her family at a restaurant. Amy had asked for a booster seat for her kids, but when she saw that another woman out eating with her family had gotten the last remaining booster seat, she got furious. She walked up to the woman and tried forcing the booster seat from her. The woman told Amy to stop and Amy saw fucking red. Amy punched the woman in the face in front of both Amy's and the woman's families. While she was punching the woman, Amy was yelling, "I am Dr. Amy Bishop." Amy was finally arrested for something, but got off with a promise of attending anger management classes. According to her husband, she never attended any classes. And now we're back at square one, the shooting. Amy had been going to the shooting range for several weeks before the shooting, and she had her husband drive her there. Eventually the day came. Amy Bishop was teaching a class that day before the meeting, and according to her students, she seemed normal. And then it was time for the faculty meeting. Amy got up in the middle of the meeting and started shooting her co-workers execution style in the head. She killed 3 people that day and wounded 3 others. The 3 people that died that day were 52-year-old Gopi Padilla, 50-year-old Maria Ragland, and 52 years old Adriel Johnson. What was bizarre about the incident though was the aftermath. Amy went to a sink and washed the gun off under the running water and removed her blood-soaked sweater. Then she walked into a room and asked a student to borrow a phone. Once she had gotten the phone, she called her husband and told him that she was done for the day and that he could come pick her up for their dinner that evening. According to her husband, she sounded completely normal. But then the cops showed up and arrested Amy Bishop. As she was being put into the police car, she refused to acknowledge that people had been killed and said that they were still alive.
It didn't happen. There's no way.
What about the people who died?
There's no way they're still alive.
They have the death penalty in Alabama, and Amy Bishop was very scared of getting the death penalty. Lucky for her though, the families of the victims showed her more mercy than she had showed their loved ones. And they said that they didn't want her executed, but instead wanted her to get life in prison. So Amy Bishop got sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in 2012. And if that is the last we'll ever hear about Amy Bishop is unsure. But for now, That's where the story of a woman with 4 kids and a successful career turning into an ice-cold murderer ends.